Okay, this shift, this movement from ambition to meaning, from the morning to the afternoon of your life, generally it's preceded by what we call a quantum moment. Sounds strange perhaps to use a term like that, but quantum moment really refers to the characteristics of what it is like when you have what Maslow called a peak experience. The first of these qualities, there's four of them. The first of them is that it's very vivid. The second quality or characteristic of these quantum moments is that it's a surprise. And the third characteristic of these quantum moments is that they are benevolent. They always feel good. The fourth and final quality is that it's enduring. That is, it isn't just something that comes and then goes and it's out the window. It lasts with you forever. For example, I left drinking behind in my life 21 years ago. And I couldn't even imagine that I could have given it up because I'd always had 2 or 3 beers every single day for the previous 10, 15, 20 years. I couldn't even remember a day when I hadn't. And I knew that I had to make that change. And it was 4:05 a.m. in the morning. I could remember the clock when it turned. I woke up and there was like a breeze in the room, something that I've never experienced before. The smell of roses. This was 21 years ago now. I can tell you what was hanging on the closet, the hook that I had there. On the mirror there, I had a cartoon that I had there. I can still see that thing exactly as if it happened this morning. The vividness of this is something that I've never ever been able to forget. I can remember how surprised I was at what was happening at that time. It was almost as if some kind of force had taken over, and I was just amazed by it. It's like when the moment is right, when you are in a different state, in a different place in your life, exactly what is supposed to happen will happen for you. The low points in your own life, these times when you think that nothing could go any worse, oftentimes are the things that we need to propel ourselves to a higher place. Let me give you an example. The night before that moment that I just described to you, I had taken my entire family, 5 children, and my wife, and we had all gone to this restaurant. And like I always did, every single time I went to a restaurant, I ordered not just 1 beer, but 2. And that was so that in case the waiter wasn't there when I wanted my second one, I would be able to have it. And the waiter said to me, "Oh, excuse me, sir." He said, "I'm sorry, but I can't serve you alcohol." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, last night one of our waiters served someone who was underage, and we had our license suspended." I said, "Come on, we're getting out of here." And I made each one of my children get up, get back into the car, strapped into their car seats and so on. My wife, who God knows had so much to do and it was such a hardship for her, but it didn't seem to matter to me at that time because I wanted to have my beers and I was making myself more important than everyone else. And we drove off and went to another restaurant. And I can remember thinking that night as I went to sleep how ashamed I was. My wife tried to talk to me a little bit about it, but I would have none of it. I was right, and that's just what the ego always makes you. It makes you right. And that night, that experience that I had at 4:05 a.m. the next day, not only did it get me off of alcohol, it probably saved my life. It transformed my life in so many different ways.
Once you're in that state of God realization, you'll understand things like your intuition. That is that inner calling that says, go this way instead of that way. Try this. Don't be afraid of that. Get rid of the fears that are so dominating your life. As Anita talks about fear and what a thing it was that created the cancer in her life, which allowed her to almost come to a place of dying. You'll discover things like synchronicity, that you have a thought and all of a sudden what you place your attention on begins to manifest and arrive in your life. You'll discover that those thoughts are not just things that are happenstance. There's no happenstance in this entire universe. It's all held together by a divine light. And one of my favorite readings I'd like to share with you is from the life and teachings of the Masters of the Far East. It said, "It has been clearly stated that life lived by the average individual is hypnotic. That is, the majority of men and women are not living life as it was intended at all. Not 1 in a million feels the freedom to live what he inwardly feels he should live. He has come under the world's opinion of himself, and this opinion is what he obeys rather than the laws of his own being. In this respect, And to this degree, he is living under an hypnotic spell. It's like hypnosis. He lives under the delusion that he is a mere human being living in a merely material world and only hopes to escape it when he dies and goes to what he calls heaven. This is not the determination intended in the plan and purpose of life. Obedience to one's inner nature, the expression of life as he instinctively feels it ought to be expressed, is the very foundation of the life which the masters reveal as the only true mode of living. That is very powerful awareness, that you are not this body that you're in, this body that comes and goes. You are the invisible divine intelligence within, the same intelligence that allows a clay pot to exist. And finally, from the Masters of the Far East, the second volume, the moment you become free from the belief that you are mere human beings, subject to human laws of life and death and the limitations which human beings have imposed, that moment you will see that you are free from all human limitations and may become sons of God, if you will. The moment you realize that you are divine, that you are free from all limitations and possessed of the strength of divinity, and you know that this divinity is the place where being comes most directly in contact with God, man is then beginning to see and know that this divinity is not something to be injected into each other from without. He is beginning to know that it is the very life of each and every person, your essence, the light within you.
You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. Any problem can be resolved with a spiritual solution. One of the most intriguing passages in A Course in Miracles suggests that you don't have a problem, you only think you do. The opening lines of the Torah as well, in Genesis in the Bible state, God created heaven and earth, and later, and all that God created was good. If you interpret these words literally, it's quite clear that problems are impossible. If God created everything, and all that God created was good, then bad doesn't exist. But, you say, disease, disharmony, despair, and so on appear to exist and run rampant in our world. When we feel separated from our sacred center, it's easy to believe so strongly in the separation that we explain any unpleasantness as a problem. In the world of spirit or God, problems simply don't exist and aren't real. When your spiritual connection is weak, you move away from the world of spirit, and problems come from your belief in separation. Your mind creates the illusion of separateness, and your body, influenced by your ego thoughts, takes on disease. Our societies are the creation of our collective thoughts. They take on the same separation sickness, and then we have what we call social problems. All of the so-called problems, however, represent a spiritual deficit that can be remedied with spiritual solutions. Think of it this way. If you change your mind, you'll solve the problem. I've written an entire book on this subject called There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. How to go about changing your mind. Can you accept the idea that it's your belief in your separation from God that creates the attitude that you label a problem? Can you explore this idea that what you're calling problems are all simply illusions or mistakes of your intellect? If God is everywhere, there's no place that God is not. Therefore, you have God with you at all times. You may believe otherwise. It is this belief system that creates your so-called problems. If you can bring truth to the presence of these illusions, they will dissolve. Just as you know that 3 plus 3 equals 6 is true and that 3 plus 3 equals 10 is untrue, by bringing truth to the presence of this arithmetic error, it simply dissolves. So too will all of your beliefs that create problems in your mind dissolve when you bring the higher energy of truth to them. St. Francis of Assisi in his famous prayer beseeches us to change our mind to this thought, where there is hatred, let me sow love. Light always dissolves darkness. Love always nullifies hate. Spirit always cancels problems. Problems exist as beliefs of your ego mind, which is unable to conceptualize an awareness of your spiritual mind, just as dark has no concept of light. By actually rewriting your agreement with reality, you can change your mind and send away any perceived problem. Change your attitude toward yourself and resolve to believe in your connectedness to the higher energy of God, even in the direst of circumstances. Turn anything that seems problematic over to your higher self, trusting that the problem is not what it seems to be. Rewrite your agreement about who you are and what you're capable of achieving. Your new agreement with reality. Your thoughts are the source of virtually everything in your life. Every relationship that you're in is something that you carry around with you. If your relationship is lousy, it's because you think of it that way. The person you're in a relationship with isn't with you in this moment, or when you're at work, or when you're in the bathroom, but your thoughts about that person are always with you. The only way you can experience another person is in your thoughts. You can't get behind their eyeballs and be them. You can only process them with your thoughts. If you look for what's wrong about them and store that negative image in your mind, then that's where your relationship exists. If you change your thoughts to what you love rather than do what you label as wrong, you've just changed your entire relationship. It went from lousy to great by your changing your mind. Try to always remember that you carry every relationship around with you in your head. Robert Frost reminds us, you love the things you love for what they are. When you forget this and process other people on the basis of what you think they should be, or what they used to be, or how they compare to what you are, then you've sent love away, and in your mind, the relationship is soured. You experience everything and everyone in your thoughts. Change your thoughts, and you change what you carry around in your head as problems. The world is just the way it is. The economy is just as it should be. The people who are behaving badly in the world are doing what they're supposed to be doing. You can process it in any way that you choose. If you're filled with anger about all of those problems, you are one more person who contributes to the pollution of anger. Your desire to do something about the lowest energies will motivate you to be more loving, more feeling, and more peaceful. And in so doing, you may influence those who are the farthest removed from God to return to their source. This new agreement with yourself to always stay connected to Spirit, even when it seems to be the most difficult thing to do, will allow whatever degree of perfect harmony that your body was designed for to proliferate. Turn diseases over to God and treat your body to regular exercise, healthy food, large amounts of pure water, and plenty of rest to allow it to function as a container for Spirit to flow through. Your new agreement with reality, in which you blended your physical self and your personality with your spiritual God-connected self, will begin to radiate a higher energy of love and light. Wherever you go, others will experience the glow of your God consciousness, and disharmony and disorder and all manner of problems simply will not flourish in your presence. Become, quote, an instrument of thy peace, unquote, as St. Francis desires in the first line of his famous prayer. Move up the ladder of human awareness from the lowest to the highest. Become a mystical being by simply changing your mind from one that created and experienced problems to one that resolves them.
Love and God, love and divine essence are exactly the same, and they are unconditional. You have to have the same love for God or for this divine essence that it has always had for you. Through the worst of your days, through the lowest points in your life, this love has always been there. It's available to you. You could take it at any time. You're never turned away. And it's a supply that's inexhaustible. You can't exhaust it. You can't make it go away. It is there. So, there is a power in unconditional love that is very difficult for most of us to grasp. I don't know if you've ever been around a being who lives and experiences unconditional love. But when you are, you discover that the energy that they radiate is infectious, like being in a room with Mother Teresa. Just being in her presence. They said of Jesus, they said of Buddha, that when they would go into a village, just their presence in the village, nothing more, just their presence in the village would change the consciousness of those around them. From the perspective of having this divinity within you, which is a love for what is going to manifest, what happens when you start picturing your world this way is that your life starts to change. What changes is you feel more peaceful. Love and peace, unconditional love and peace, really go hand in hand. And when you get this quality, and what I suggest to you here is that in order to practice this, to understand that you sleep better, you eat better, you automatically begin to take better care of your body. Toxins are no longer that important to you. Exercise becomes something that you just absolutely do because you're treating your body with unconditional love. And it demands that, it encourages that, it wants that. It doesn't want to be dreary, it doesn't want to be overweight, it doesn't want to be drugged up, it doesn't want to be lethargic. It wants to be flowing because the universal energy that makes the whole thing work flows. It doesn't stop. That energy isn't stopping. It's not stagnant. It's a flowing. When you start doing these things and these changes start taking place, what happens is also the prosperity that you thought you couldn't have also begins to flow. You've stopped all blockages. And while this just sounds like, oh yeah, but I don't have to do anything, you will do something. You will act upon this unconditional love. It's like go on a program for 3 days. Make a 3-day program in which you are going to communicate with your spouse, your lover, one of your children, a friend, a coworker, a boss, someone that you are close to. And every thought that you are going to have directed at that person is going to be one of unconditional love. No matter how crappy they may act, no matter how much complaining they may do, no matter how much you find them to be irritating or whatever, you are going to respond with unconditional love. Not gushy, oh, isn't that great, you're throwing up on me again. Not that at all. But just the thought, the absence of judgment, the absence of anger, the absence of the ego demand that says, you know, you should really be like I am. You're wrong and I'm right. You just let go of that. Try it for 3 days. A 3-day program of unconditional love. And watch what happens to your energy level. And watch what happens to the things that you want to manifest in your life. And begin to notice how you're sleeping and what the content of your dreams are. And notice how other people begin to treat you. You see, unconditional love is joy and it's also power. There's an enormous power, but it's not the power that is an investment in having power over others. It's a power of being able to tune in finally to the thing that makes the whole universe work. What do you think keeps this whole planet from falling off into an abyss? What do you think it is that keeps your shoulder from falling off? What do you think it is that keeps the cells of your eyeballs in their sockets? There's a force, there's an energy, there's something that is working that keeps everything in place, that makes it all work, that makes it all flow. You finally begin to tune into that. You start to trust your nature more than you trust your intellect, which is your ego. Your nature knows how to work. It knows how to make your body work. Your nature knows exactly how many nutrients to send to all the different organs of the body. You don't have to think about that every time you eat something. It's working. Your nature knows how much oxygen to take in and how much to let out. You don't need a formula for that. Your intellect says that water there, it can't possibly be made up of 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen. Those are gases. Your intellect says there's no way. But nevertheless it is, isn't it, as we examine it. So your nature works perfectly in perfect harmony, as does everything else that keeps the oceans from tilting on their side and having tidal waves. This nature of yours that you are in, that is in you, that you are not separate from, is flowing. It's perfect. It's unconditional. It doesn't judge. It doesn't ask anything. Be that, and the rest of this will fall right into place. It's astounding how powerful this unconditional love is.
Think about what is missing in your life, and you talk to your friends about it, and you put your attention and your energy on it in your telephone conversations, and you go to sleep thinking about what is missing, and you have this kind of an energy system going on for you. You will continue to have what you are thinking about show up in your life, and you'll see more and more and more of missingness continue to show up. You can't think about and put your energy on what is missing unless you want it to keep being that way in your life. So that's the first thing you want to shift. That's the first obstacle to reaching this state of what I call intention. Secondly, if you put your thoughts on what is, you will continue to attract what is into your life. Now, I'm going to suggest something very strange up here right now. I told you when it gets weird, that you have the ability to put your attention on an inner mantra that I have recorded in a CD called Meditations for Manifesting, that came to me from a teacher 2,300 years ago named Patanjali in India, who taught people at that time, when this is before the Middle Ages, this was like when people hadn't been out of caves too long, was teaching people how to levitate, and was teaching people how to bilocate, and was teaching people how to have the gift of fish and loaves 300 years before Jesus showed up on this planet. And his aphorisms of Patanjali are a big part of a spiritual solution to every problem. And what he suggested at that time is a meditation called japa. And this meditation is something where you take your attention, your inner energy, off of what is and onto what you intend to manifest, and you repeat the sound that is in the name of God as an inner mantra. And by repeating this sound, you attract the energy from outside of yourself that is the source from which you emanated to cooperate with you and literally collaborate with you to shift it into whatever it is that you intend to manifest. And you can do this with money. You can do this with getting pregnant if you haven't been able to do that. You can get it with selling your home. You can get it, and if you take a look at 300 years later, 400 years later, John the Baptist writes in the New Testament, the opening line of the of the book of John in the New Testament. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. As strange as it may sound to you, based upon the conditioning that you have had, just like Ivan Illich, the repetition of the sound as an inner mantra is a way of getting in the gap. And it is a way of, when you repeat this sound, attracting whatever energy, that dormant forces that are out there, into your life to have whatever you need show up. And all I can say to you is, I stand up here before you tonight from my heart telling you that it has always worked for me. It is a meditation practice. It is so powerful, and I can't tell you how many people have been practicing it, including Gary, who spoke to you here today. And there is absolutely no limit to what you can attract into your life simply by practicing it. I have put it on CD. I put it in Getting in the Gap. I teach it. I donate all of the proceeds from it to charities because I was asked to teach it, but to take no money for it. And I've been doing it for several years now. If your thoughts are on what is, let's just say you've got a disease process. Cancer, arthritis, the flu, a cold. If your thoughts are on, if you get a sniffle and your thoughts are on, this is in my nose today, but tomorrow it'll be in my throat. On Wednesday, it'll be down in my chest. On Thursday, I'll probably have a fever. I'm going to have to take Friday off. Now it's Monday morning, and you've got a sniffle, and in your mind, you're taking Friday off with a fever. If this is how you have trained your mind to work, to put your attention on the circumstances of your life, self-actualizing people, Abraham Maslow was a great teacher of mine. I was blessed to know him. I was blessed to be one of his devotees. He died on the 14th of June, 1970, in the same hour that I walked across the stage at Cobo Hall in Detroit receiving my PhD. In the same hour. He passed the baton on. He said, I've taught self-actualization to the academic world. Now you take it to the masses. And Maslow said, self-actualizing people are distinguished from everybody else with this sentence: they must be what they can be. They must be what they can be. And one of those 10 secrets for success and inner peace is that you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. And know this, that your mind created everything in your life that you call a problem. And self-actualizing, highly functioning people who live at these extremely, extraordinarily high levels of consciousness never put their thoughts on what is if they don't like what is. Because if your thoughts are on what is, and you despise what is, and if you look at poor people, if you look at unsuccessful people, if you look at sickly people, if you look at tired people, if you look at addicted people, you will see people who put their attention constantly on their problems, on what is wrong, on what isn't working, on what I can't do, and so on. They'll tell you about it, they'll focus on it, and when your thoughts are on what is, and what you think about is what expands, you continue to attract more of what is into your life. When I had a practice, I had a woman who came to me who said, I just went through a divorce 7 months ago, and I've been dating, and I've dated 4 different men, and all 4 of them have used me as a sex object. And every single one of them called me up after the first date and were mistreating me, and they didn't have any respect for me, and that was the end of it. And she said, I'd like you to talk to all 4 of these men. And I said, there's only one common denominator here. You are attracting into your life what you are putting your attention on. It's called the Job effect. You can't think about what is missing, and you can't think and put your energy and talk about what is if you don't like what is. Can't do that unless you want more of that to show up. Third, you cannot put your attention or your thoughts or your energy on what always has been. If you put your thoughts or your energy on what always has been is what will continue to show up into your life. What always has been is the wake of a boat. Your life is a boat. It's heading up the river in that direction. And it's heading there at 40 knots. And you're standing on the stern, and you're looking down at the water, and as the boat goes in this direction, here you are looking down into the water, and what do you see? You see the wake. And what is the wake? The wake is the trail that is left behind. That's what the wake of your life is. That's what the wake of the boat is. And if you ask yourself the question, what's driving the boat? What's making this thing head in this direction? The answer is the present moment energy that is being generated by the engine, and nothing more is what's making the boat go in this direction. And then if you ask yourself this key question, is it possible for the wake to drive the boat? Can a trail that is left behind make a boat go in this direction? What's the answer? Impossible, isn't it? And so too is it impossible for the wake of your life, the trail that you've left behind, to be the reason why your life is going in this direction. It is not because of anything that has happened back here. That's an illusion that we live under. What has happened back here is a trail. The choices you make in this moment. And if your thoughts are on what always has been, this is the way we've always done things, this is the kind of person I am, I can't change, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, all of those cliches that have become so much a part of our life, if your thoughts are on what always has been, and you despise what always has been, you will continue to attract more of what always has been, even though you despise it. It works that way. So you can't think about what's missing, what is, and what always has been. And it gets worse. You cannot think about and put your attention on what they want or expect for you if you want that to change in your life. And there's no shortage of people who have an opinion about what it is that you should be or shouldn't be or how you should be doing it. Most of these are your relatives. I have a wonderful book in mind to write. It's called Your Friends Are God's Way of Apologizing for Your Relatives. But if I talk to your relatives, they laugh too. So we all have this idea that the reason I'm not getting where I'd like to be, particularly with young people and working with young people over the years, it's because my parents want this, and my parents think that, and my parents won't let me do this. And I always said, well, but why are you so attached to what your parents think? Well, these are my parents, and I have to do it. I said, you can listen to it, you can take it in, but you don't have to embrace it. You don't have to live by that. And certainly when you become adults, when if there are people out there who convince you that you should or shouldn't be doing this or that, then you're going to continue to attract exactly what it is that they have their attention on. So if you put your thoughts on what they want for you, you tell everybody else about how it makes you go from being blissed to pissed just by being in their presence, just by being on the telephone with them. That person, that in-law, that mother, that father, that grandparent, that child, that whoever it might be, is giving you, or even your neighbors or your friends or whomever, your coworkers, are telling you what you should or shouldn't be, and you don't like the advice that they're giving, and you resent very strongly. One of the 10 secrets for success and inner peace says there are no justified resentments. Your resentments are things that destroy you. So if your thoughts are on what they want for you, and what they want for you is something you don't like, you will continue to attract more of and use the attractor energy of the universe to attract more of what they want for you, even though you are upset about it. So here you go. There are 4 things that you can't do with your mind if you want to move into this state of intention that I'll be speaking about tomorrow. And these are: you cannot put your thoughts on what's missing, on the circumstances of your life, on what you always have been, or what others want for you. So you have to learn to do a somersault into the inconceivable and only put your thoughts or your attention on what you intend to manifest for yourself. Every thought that you have is an energy. Everything in the universe is an energy. And when you have a thought that is a thought that weakens you, which Hawkins speaks about so brilliantly in Power versus Force, that thought, the 10th secret in 10 Secrets says, wisdom is avoiding all thoughts which weaken you. And thoughts change and make you strong or weak depending upon whether or not what you're thinking at any given moment. The instant that you put something into your body and hold it close to it, the moment that you move into the energy field of someone who is negative, and I'll be speaking more about this tomorrow afternoon and doing a little bit more of demonstration on it, that everything in this universe is an energy. I have the prayer of St. Francis on which I'll be reciting tomorrow, and Sky will sing for you tomorrow, on a card that is produced by a woman who lives in a wheelchair. And also, and all it takes is to be in the energy field. If I had Linda hold this up next to her, it would strengthen her. Just the words. Energy is in everything. And here's one of the most powerful notions about how you move into this area of bringing higher energy to the presence of lower energy in your life to strengthen rather than weaken you. It was on the wall of the ashram where Mother Teresa lived. And it goes like this: if you want to know tonight what to do and what to think and how to bring this energy to you, listen to these words. And put these, as I said, the money that's collected on these goes to a woman who lives in a wheelchair, who has the intention to not be dependent. And you stick this on there, and you know, your children just have to walk by these words. And the energy, it touches and impacts them. Just like the music, the CD, even carrying it around. It's why I knew that Sky's CD would strengthen rather than weaken. You can take the prayer of St. Francis, which she sings on there, put that on in your car and play it in a moment of frustration or anguish in traffic, and you know what? You can move the traffic. I know you laugh and you think that kind of thing is impossible. There is nothing that you can't do when you shift your energy from energies that weaken to energies that strengthen. And this is what Kent Keith had written and what Mother Teresa lived by. She said, people are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone may destroy overnight. That's particularly relevant in America, isn't it? Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you have anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it's all between you and God. It was never between you and them. Anyway, I'll start over. In the universe, there is an unmeasurable, indescribable force, which those who live of the source call intention. And that absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attached to intent by a connecting link. Sorcerers, all of you, that's what you will be when you leave here. Sorcerers, people who live of the source, are not only concerned with understanding and employing that connecting link, but they are especially concerned with cleansing it of the numbing effects brought about by the concerns of living at ordinary levels of consciousness. There is a connecting link between you and everything in this universe is connected to this thing called intention. I'd like to suggest to you that everything that you can look around and see and touch and experience with your senses originated someplace else. You are in this world, folks, but you are not of this world. And you showed up here in this world of form and boundaries and beginnings and ends. You showed up from a field called intention, and you were intended into this universe and into this world by this force field that I'm calling intention. In my new book, The Power of Intention, which is a year or so away from being published, I'm calling intention something that is a future pull that is invisible. Every acorn has intention in it to become an oak tree or whatever it is to become. Every apple blossom that just looks like a little flaky pieces of flowery substance is nothing but the future pull of an apple. And in you, in a tiny little drop of human protoplasm that collided with another one at the moment of your parents getting together, and this thing that we called conception, there was a dot. A tiny little microscopic dot. It happened in a tiny microsecond, a dot. And in that little tiny dot that you can't even see with the naked eye, that you need a microscope to see, in that dot was everything that you were destined to become as a physical being. Your height, your weight, the color of your skin, the color of your eyes, the length of your arms, and the length of everything else, what droops, what doesn't. Everything that was, and here you are, sitting here, watching it, observing it, noticing it, and you know that there's nothing but who you are is nothing but a ghost in the machine. You're watching it and you're observing it, and it's going to go through its paces and do what it was destined to do in the moment of that microscopic dot, right? I'm 6'1". I didn't decide to be 6'1". I have blue eyes. I have hair falling out of my head and growing on my shoulders, my ears, my nose. You have all of these characters. You look at it, you observe it, you notice it, you squeeze the back of your hand. I used to squeeze it, it would snap back. Now I can count how long it takes to get back. And you're watching it and you know. But I'd like to present to you in a few moments a little different view on this thing called intention. I'd like you to take a look at the dot that began you, in which everything that you were destined to become as a physical being. I'd like you to say to yourself this question: where did the dot come from? Where did it come from? You think it came from the sperm of your father and the collision with the egg of your mom? Forget it. It's an illusion. You take that dot, which is your beginnings. A heart starts beating inside of a mother's womb 6, 7 weeks after that moment of conception, and it's a total mystery to every great scientist on the planet today. We have no idea where that life came from and where it goes after we leave it. No idea. It's a complete and total mystery. So let's look at the dot that began you, and let's take a microscope to it and turn up the magnification on that dot so we can find out where it came from, its source. And we turn up the magnification, and first we see in the dot a whole bunch of molecules. We take that molecular microscope and we toss it out, and we take an atomic microscope and we put it on there, and we see that inside of the molecules there are tinier particles called atoms. Then we take this atomic microscope and we turn up the magnification. We say, where did this dot come from? Let's find its source. And inside of those atoms we see electrons and neutrons and protons and croutons and all of the things that we all memorized when we were in science class. And we say, well, there it is. So we take the electron and we pull it out and we put it into an electron microscope and we turn up the magnification. We're just looking for our source. That's all. And we turn up the magnification and we turn it up and up and up and up, and we zoom in, and guess what? It's just a whole bunch of particles. Now they call them subatomic particles, but it's mostly just empty spaces with particles all floating around. It's this huge dance. And we take out one of those subatomic particles. This is called quantum physics. This is the study of matter at the subatomic level. What is it like? What happens to matter? And we turn up the magnification as high as we can, and we can now call these things new names. We call them quarks. And we take these quarks, these tiny little subatomic particles that behave in the strangest of ways, because when you look at them and observe them, that changes what they are. At the subatomic level from which all things originate, just the way that we observe something determines whether it will be what it will become. And that's interesting. If we are nothing but subatomic particles in a cell called humanity, the way we look at things literally can impact what it is that we attract or don't attract into our lives. Just the way we look at things. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So we take this little quark and we take it out to Arizona into what they call quantum physics particle accelerators. And we put this quark in a particle accelerator, and we rev it up at 250,000 miles an hour in these circular things, and we get these things zipping at each other, and then we collide them. We collide these tiny little, and we open up the particle accelerator to find out what is the source. And we look inside, and guess what's there? Nothing. At the subatomic level, at the tiniest level, there are no particles. In fact, quantum physics teaches us that particles themselves are not responsible for more particles. St. Paul could have told you that 2,000 years ago. That which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. The source of everything is not in the physical world. So, let's go back to intention. If everything that you were destined to become is in that little microscopic dot, and that microscopic dot originated from something that has no form to it, is it possible that your physiology and everything that you were destined to become was determined in a world in which there is no form before it ever got into form? Why not? That's where it all came from. Now, if everything that you were physically destined to become is in that microscopic dot, and that dot came from the world of spirit, let's call it spirit, then why isn't it possible that everything that you were destined to become that is not in the physical dimension, that is every thought and every emotion and every great expectation that God has of you and everything that you're capable of becoming, why isn't that in there as well? That intention is a field of energy from which you originated, not a set of particles in a moment of conception. And if that's the case, if you can accept that, then you have to say, what does intention look like? What do you think if you had magical binoculars that you could somehow adjust the focus and you looked over here through these binoculars and in there you could see the field from which all things emanate? If you could see it, what do you think it would look like? Well, I've just written a whole book about it. And one of those chapters is called The 7 Faces of Intention. I suggest to you that intention has a look to it, that this invisible energy field from which the dot that became you emanated has certain characteristics or qualities. First of all, it is creative. It wants to create. It has to create. Imagine an energy field which is responsible for everything showing up into the physical world, deciding that it didn't want to create. It's too much work, I'm tired, I don't want to do this. It is in a constant state of creativity. It is also, the second quality, is that it is everything that it allows to come into the energy field of the world of boundaries. It is kindly toward. Kindness and intention go hand in hand.
Line by Albert Einstein when he was talking to his students about trying to solve mathematical problems and equations. He said, you can't ever solve a problem with the same mind that created it. It's what they call sometimes in management circles thinking outside of the dots or outside of the box, getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of looking at things the way you've always looked at them, and having a different kind of an awareness. I came across this quote not too long ago. Moving away the clouds does not make the sunshine. It merely reveals what was hidden all along. The sunshine, the sun is always there. And you don't make it shine by just taking things away. There's something inside all of us that is hidden. And it's the ability to, I call it rewriting our agreement with reality. It requires a new kind of awareness, a willingness, if you will, to see yourself as potentially capable of virtually anything. I've always loved the observation from the New Testament of Jesus, that even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things. That within each and every one of us there is this ability to be healers. There's this ability to be able to manifest and attract anything into our lives that we put our attention on. There's this ability to live at such a high level of consciousness that we can transcend our bodies. My internal wiring has always been one of whatever it is that I've got in my life as a problem, that I have to take responsibility for it, but I also have the capacity to be able to change it. And not only to change around what it is that is not working for me, but also to change around what I have been attracting into my life. I think it begins with this this whole idea of being inspired. I've always liked that word, inspired, inspiration, because its origin is in spirit. And then the opposite word is being informed. And so when you're in form, in the physical world, when you're in form, you get information. You get lots of information. And this is what we call the information age, right? So there's no shortage of information. They say that on a little chip the size of your thumbnail, we can put the names and addresses of everybody in the United States and Canada on a little chip the size of your thumbnail. That's really more information, I think, than we need. What we are doing is we are moving from the age of information to the age of inspiration, I believe. And as we move into the age of inspiration, where collectively mankind is beginning to have a collective capacity to be able to think thoughts which empower us rather than which weaken us, which, according to Hawkins' research, up until about 1985 or 1986, collectively, mankind's collective thoughts always produced that which weakens us. And now, in the last few years, we have moved above the level where man's collective consciousness is at least at a place where collectively we are empowering ourselves rather than using force. And as we move into the world of inspiration, we have to understand what that means. And Patanjali had a wonderful observation. I wrote about it in Wisdom of the Ages. He said, when you are inspired, that is, in spirit, and remember, it is in the world of spirit, it is in the world of thoughts where we change, where we go to the place where we create anything we want for ourselves in our lives. So that remembering here, the theme is that you can't solve any problem that you might have in your life with the same mind that created it. So you're moving into a place now called spirit. That which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. We're moving into the world of the invisible now. When you are inspired, and think about the moments in your life when you've had the most inspiration, inspirado. You lose any touch of fatigue. I have gone and been inspired at moments in my life when I have written for almost 24 straight hours without stopping, without eating, without thinking about sleep. I just got into one of those modes, what we call a zone sometimes, where everything just flowed. When you are in that place, you transcend everything. And you don't worry about whether people are going to call you or not call you. You don't worry about your children. You don't worry about being sick. You don't think about the cold that you might have. You don't think about being tired and how much sleep you'll need. When you're inspired, you're in spirit. When you're in spirit, you're connected to your source. And now what you're doing is you're moving out of the mindset of inform or information, which is where all problems occur in the world of the physical, and you're shifting into the world of spirit.
All of it is there to teach us something grand and something delightful, and that helps us move to higher and more spiritual places. So the way that you eliminate adversity is literally to be thankful for it and to say thank you for everything that is showing up in my life. It is going to teach me something profound. And some of the most difficult and very troublesome kinds of things that have occurred to me in my life, what I thought were at the time, have taught me how to be a better writer, a better speaker, a kinder person, a better human being. Because true nobility, it's not about being better than other people. It's about being better than you used to be. And the way that you get better at being than you used to be is by having these challenges show up and then transcending them and overcoming them. I don't look back on my days of drinking, which stopped 17 years ago, as anything other than great and wonderful events that helped me. All of that drinking and all of that behavior and the drugs that I did and all of those kinds of things have helped me to become a stronger, more purified, more decent, better human being, better husband, better father, better speaker, better man as a person. Anyway, let me try to get through the rest of these. We just have a few moments left.
Okay.
Were you going to say something, Diane?
Well, I was going to say, do you think people get caught up in the why me kind of mentality?
Yeah, I think they do. Instead of saying, why not me? So thank you. Thank you for all of it, every single bit of it. I mean, there's a slogan here on Maui that says, no rain, no rainbows. You know, so I always remind people of that whenever there's a rainy day and the tourists are all here and they're all upset about the rain. I say, but you see all those rainbows that you just love every day? They have rainbows over here on the island. You can't have them without the rain. And I think it's a good symbol for our lives. One of the things that Gandhi said that's really, I think, very important is that there's more to life than making things go faster and making it always increase our speed. That the idea that we have to get there fast, we have to be ahead of the other person, slowing ourselves down. In the 26th verse of the Tao that I was writing about this morning, it talks about the stillness, about being able to that stillness is the mother of unrest. In other words, the master of unrest. In other words, in order to be able to get to a place where you are no longer filled with unrest, you have to go to this place of stillness, this place of quiet, this place of peace that is within each and every one of us. And that means not telling yourself that you have to be there ahead of the other guy, not rushing through the traffic lights, but meditating your way through when a yellow light comes, instead of rushing through it, that's just a habit. Instead of that, just slowing down, putting your foot on the brake and saying, thank you for 1 minute to just sit here and be at peace and be kind and be in a sense of harmony with my source, which is always at peace. Also, I said, do everything that you can to eliminate debt in your life, because all of the debt that you have, the credit card debt, the money that you owe the banks, the mortgages, all of those kinds of things are a way of giving up control of your life and putting it into the hands of someone who will be controlling the purse strings of your life. And also to let go of your idea about everything is evaluated on the basis of how much it costs or how much it's worth. Try to take the dollar value off of things and just enjoy everything in your life for what it is.
I'm going through something right now, and I'm kind of wanting to know why all this is happening to me in my life. At 15, my dad died unexpectedly of, an aortic aneurysm, and then I dealt with that somewhat decent. I don't want to say great, but I was only 15. And then I got married, and my husband and I struggled for 4.5 years to get pregnant, with one miscarriage along the way. And we got pregnant in November last year. We found out December 8th. And then on April 4th, we found out that the baby was really sick. Mm-hmm. And I ended up delivering a stillborn on April 19th. Mm-hmm. And I'm just not quite sure why all this is happening and how to get through it.
Yeah, I can hear your pain. First of all, as you move along this path that I'm writing about, especially in inspiration, you find out that all of the greatest teachers who've ever walked among us, including Jesus, all of them, have taught us that death is not a punishment. That it is the inevitability of all things. That everything that composes decomposes, and the question isn't whether it's going to decompose. The question that we have as human beings is, how long is it going to take? How much time do we get? When you say the words, "My father died unexpectedly," my immediate response to that is unexpected to you.
Yeah.
But not to God, and not, and that the moment that your father was conceived and the moment that he showed up on this planet, his birth was here, independent of his opinion about it, and so was his death. And the same is true of the miscarriages that you've had and the stillbirths that you've had. That there's a perfection in all of this, and that these souls who showed up very, very temporarily, and then for whatever reason that none of us will ever be privy to, weren't ready to show up into this world. What you are doing with it is you're taking it personally. You're saying to yourself, why me? And how could something so terrible as this happen? And how much of this kind of thing do I have to put up with before I'll have peace in my life? And I'm saying to you, have peace in your life now, and even be in a state of gratitude for just the fact that you've been able to participate in the dance of life. You've already created life twice. And because it didn't last as long as you thought it should last, that's just our ego at work.
The next principle I call giving up your personal history. And I learned it from a man named Carlos Castaneda, who once said that one day, he said, I finally realized that I no longer needed a personal history. And just like drinking, he said, I gave it up. And that, and only that, has made all the difference in the world. You know the nice thing about giving up your personal history? Is that if you don't have a story, You don't have to live up to it. All of us have these bags of manure that we carry around with us, called our past, and the people who have done things to us, and the events and the circumstances, all of this stuff that we use and we bond to. And we bond ourselves to these wounds of our past, and we identify ourselves on the basis of these wounds. And every once in a while we set it down and we reach in there and we smear it all over ourselves. And then we wonder, why does my life smell so bad? I don't understand this. When in fact, the now, this moment, merging yourself into the now, means that you may have been in a relationship. I had a woman from Holland who came over to see me, whose husband had left her after 25 years. She had 4 children, and she just had been on the verge of suicide. And she was losing weight, and she was depressed, and she was taking all kinds of drugs for it, and she was getting sicker and sicker because she just couldn't get over it. And she came to a book signing that I was doing at a bookstore down in Florida. And she said, "You've got to say something to me. You've got to say something to me that will help me to get over this." And I told her this line. I said, "Give up your personal history. Merge yourself here, now, into this moment. And those 25 years are something, if you want to understand how to do it, think of your past as, oh, this hat. And this is your past. Now, you can't just set this thing down over here and walk away from it and give up your personal history, because you'll always have it there to look back at. What you do is you pick up your past and you embrace it. You understand it, you accept it as, I had to go through these things that I had to go through in order for me to get to this place today, and the evidence for that is that I did. You don't need any more evidence. You did. And then you toss it. You toss it. You embrace it and you toss it. And you merge into the now by giving up your attachment. And some of you have heard me use the metaphor of the wake. Alan Watts talked about the wake is not what drives the boat. The wake is just a trail that is left behind. That's all it is. And so is the wake of your life. And the wake doesn't make the boat go, and neither does the wake of your life the reason why your life is going in the direction that it is. The wake is a trail that is left behind, and it's an illusion to believe that it is the cause of your suffering or your struggles or your difficulty. Give it up. Let it go. Embrace it, understand it, get help doing that if you must, and then move into the now. The next principle I call, it's from a line of Albert Einstein. He said, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. In order to work at solving these things called problems in your life, you have to change your mind. It is your mind where they live. It is your mind that created them. There is where you experience them. They're all illusions. You must change your mind. Literally rewrite your agreement with reality. One of the things I had said earlier is that one of the most difficult things to do in the world is to admit that you were wrong. Admitting that you were wrong is nothing more than saying, I have been making choices with my mind that have created things in my life that are not working. And I no longer intend to continue making those choices. I was wrong. You don't have to make a declaration of it. You don't have to go out and feel guilty about it. You just simply say, it didn't work. The relationship that I was in before, I behaved in these ways. I didn't realize that it wasn't working for me. Now I do, and this is where I choose to be now. The secret of a successful relationship is, to me, understanding that you put your attention and your energy in a person on what you love rather than what you don't love. Robert Frost said it so beautifully. We love the things we love for what they are. For what they are. Not for what they ought to be, not for what they used to be, but for what they are. So when you look into the eyes of a person you're in a relationship with, whether it's your children, you catch them doing things right as much as you possibly can. That's oftentimes takes a lot of hunting, but you'll find it. And when you think that my relationship isn't working, remember, it's in my mind. What am I thinking about that person? And if I could just change my mind and put my thoughts on what I love about this person and keep them there, that makes the relationship flourish. And there are people who go through their entire relationship history with no anger, no hatred, no bitterness, and only love. The next principle is, I call it treating yourself as if you already were what you would like to become. In other words, you get out in front of your life and you see yourself as having already what you know you'd like to have and deserve to have. My children know how to do this perfectly. I have a daughter who wanted a prom dress, and the prom dress was way outside the budget that I thought a prom dress should be. Well, I thought a prom dress shouldn't cost over $20, so I do have a problem, right? But I upped it to somewhere around $250. I don't know how much, whatever. To me, it was still more than I paid for my first house, okay? But at any rate, she called and said, "Dad, this is the only prom dress I could wear. I've got to wear this prom dress. If I don't wear this prom dress," it's just on and on and on with this wonderful. You know, I saw a wonderful book about how to raise teenage daughters. The title of it is "Get Out of My Life, but First Drive Me and Cheryl to the Mall." All right, that's the actual title. It's a good book. And so I told Serena, I said, it's just beyond the budget. I've got a certain amount of money that I'm willing to put for it. And she said, "But I've already seen myself wearing it. I've already tried it on. I have a picture of myself in the dress in my living room, and I've already showed it to the guy who's taking me to the prom." I mean, it was this whole thing about, and she already saw herself in it. I said, "Well, if you see yourself in it, then you're going to have to also see yourself as earning the difference between what I'm willing to pay." And she drew up a contract. She went onto the computer, and on the background of the computer, you know, where they have these little background things they put on, there was 500 pictures of the dress, all right? And she signed a contract and said, "I'll babysit, I'll do this, I'll do that, and I will pay the difference." And she did, and she wore the dress, because she understood that you treat yourself as if you already are what you'd like to become. There's a genius in you. You have to treat yourself as if you already were that genius. There's something you're completely capable of. See yourself as already there. Then you'll act upon those thoughts, because the ancestor to every action, said Emerson, is a thought. The next principle is called treasuring your divinity. Treasuring your divinity. There's a wonderful observation that I saw from Emerson in Self-Reliance. It's about trusting your divinity, knowing that you are connected to your source, knowing that you are a divine creation and that there are no accidents. He said, "A man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes across his mind from within, more than the luster of the firmament of bards and sages. Yet he dismisses without notice his own thought, because it's his own." In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. We often reject our thoughts, and we see the things that we think of as grand and as genius, and we reject them because they're our own. Treasuring our divinity instead of being terrified of it. Knowing that I am always connected to my source. There is no way that I cannot, because it is in you, and I am in you, and you are in me, and you can never be separated from it. There is no place that this source is not. It grows everybody's fingernails. It beats everybody's hearts. It digests everybody's foods. It opens all the flowers, and you're always connected to it. And finally, the last principle I call wisdom is avoiding all thoughts which weaken you. You know, every thought has an energy, just like everything else in the universe. And if you have a thought of shame, it will weaken your muscles. And what is your heart but a muscle? If you raise a child to believe in shame and feel ashamed of themselves, every time they think that shameful thought, they will be weakened. And if you have a thought of fear, and if you have a thought of stress, and you have a thought of anguish and anxiety, all of these thoughts and many more are the thoughts that will always weaken you. When you are having a thought that you know is disempowering you, shift it. Shift it to one that is empowering rather than disempowering. And the thoughts that empower are thoughts of neutrality and willingness and love, and ultimately thoughts of divinity. And when you see a troubled person who is out there struggling at the highest level of unity consciousness or God consciousness or spiritual consciousness, you recognize yourself in all that you see. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And I am connected to that person. Changing your thoughts. I appeared on the Tonight Show many years ago, several times, quite a few times. And I remember coming home from the Tonight Show, and I was walking along the beach, and they had taped the show the night before, and I was out for a walk, and a woman who lived in the Northeast stopped me, and she said, "Didn't I see you last night on the, how could you be here?" I said, "Well, I flew the red eye, and I was walking along." And she said, "You know, we're moving down here." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like?" And I said to her, I said, "Well, what are they like where you live?" She said, "Well," she said, I live in a very big city." And she said, "They're very pushy. And people are not very kind. And they don't have time for you." And she said, "It's really not very pleasant." She said, "That's one of the reasons I'm leaving there." I said, "Well, that's pretty much what you're going to find here." That's basically what the people are like here. On the way back on the same day, someone else who had seen me the night before on the Tonight Show, who had lived in the Midwest, stopped me and asked me almost the same question. She said, "You live here?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, my husband and I are moving here and we're looking for a school." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like here?" I said, "What are they like in Chicago where you live?" She said, "Oh," she said, "it's the Midwest." She said, "People are very friendly, they're open, they open their homes to you, they're very loving, they're very kind." She said, "It's a wonderful place." She said, "I love that, I'm going to really miss that." I said, "That's pretty much what you're going to find here." It's what you expect, it's what you think about that expands. It's what Emerson taught us. The ancestor to every action is a thought. Change your thoughts, and you change your world. Change your expectations, and you change around what you begin to manifest and see showing up in your life.
The idea of having a quiet mind. When I first started practicing meditating, which I encourage people to do, not from any Far Eastern guru loincloth kind of thing at all, but as a way of understanding that there's another dimension. If I were to take you, the listener, and to put you in chains, and to put you in a dungeon, and to deny you light and human contact for the rest of your life, you would probably say to yourself, "This is the end. I mean, this is the end. I can't handle this." There are some people, believe it or not, among us, who, if you were to do that very same thing, would say, "This is a beginning." There's a whole world there. If any of us were forced to learn how to go into that world, we would discover many, many, many things about ourselves. And I'm talking about the world of the mind. It's not an accident that all of the great spiritual masters have encouraged a kind of meditation of one kind or another, and that most advanced people, most awakened people, practice it on a regular basis. It's not an accident. You begin to discover how slimy your mind is. The thoughts that you have all the time, and how much disasterizing we do with our minds, and how much stuff that we occupy our minds with that is so unnecessary and so silly, so foolish, so destructive, that quieting our mind and meditating really go hand in hand. Now, meditating doesn't require a lot of training. It doesn't require somebody teaching you exactly how to do it or whatever, because that defeats the purpose of meditating. When you meditate, you really want to go in there and quiet your mind. And what you want to be able to do in your life is to have an open, but not a rampage going on inside of your mind, not 1,000 thoughts barraging it. And these thoughts that you have, these are yours. These are your creation. I used to tell people as a therapist, if you don't believe that you're in control of your thoughts, then I want you to tell me who is. Then I want you to find all those people who are in control of your thoughts and send them all to me. Then I will treat them and you will get better, which is absurd. Obviously, you're not going to get better by treating somebody else. You are the creator of thought, which means that in some metaphysical way, you're the creator of your life. Thought originates with each one of us. But most of us have trained ourselves to believe that whatever we think just sort of happens, and thoughts just sort of, I call it the pop-in theory, you know? They just sort of pop in, and I can't help it. Boop, there's a thought, and it's just there. And I can't help it, it just happened. That isn't true when you train your mind. We spend so much of our energy training ourselves in all kinds of areas. We train ourselves in business. If we're going to get a new computer system, we go out and we spend millions of dollars in a company, and we train people how to work it, and we want to become good at golf or swimming or tennis or backgammon or anything that you can think of. We know that we got to go out and we got to practice and we got to train ourselves. We train ourselves, and we ignore our mind, which is 99% of who we are. We just completely ignore it. Like there's no training available for our minds. And we can all do that. I've really learned how to do it myself. No one ever taught me. You know, when I used to teach at university, I taught in Berlin for half a year. There was 70 students in the class. And I would have the first student introduce themselves and their name. Then I would have the second student introduce the person who was just introduced and himself. And each time I would repeat it. And I'd have the third student introduce the two that he had just introduced plus himself. And we do that for the whole class. By the time we got to the 70th student, they had to introduce everybody in the class by name, and I would then repeat each one of them. And I just had a very simple technique for doing that. It was just like concentrated effort on making my mind remember 70 people's names in an hour and a half. Now, I wasn't doing it to waste an hour and a half. This was a class on teaching people how to identify neurotic behavior in people. And it's like what I wanted to do was to teach them that they could do things with their minds, just like their patients do, that they never thought of, that they never even dreamt were possible for them. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, they would have like 80, 90% recall. And by the end of the fourth or fifth week, everybody knew everybody's name in the class, and they had all trained themselves. And most people go out there and they're introduced to somebody, they say, hello, my name is Wayne. They say, what would you say your name was? They can't remember one person's name in 1 minute. And they think that, oh, I have a poor memory. But it's because they don't train. Well, the mind can be trained, and meditating is a perfect way to do that. And there's a wonderful world in there, in your mind. Quieting your mind means that you're no longer susceptible to all of the external influences that are around you. I'm always amazed when I watch the U.S. Open tennis championships that are played in New York right near LaGuardia at how the players are able to continue playing with jets going on overhead. And yet, when I am really completely involved in a tennis match, I've had people where I've played, I've had jackhammers going next to me, and my opponent is going crazy. They have to go over there, and I tell them, I don't notice it. My concentration is on the ball. And I don't hear that lawnmower going off or the jackhammer going or the airplane going on overhead. We can train ourselves to do that. The people who are really good at any game or any activity that requires concentration know how to do that. Well, we all want to be able to be better at that, and we don't want to have our minds occupied, particularly with worry and anxiety and stressful kinds of things. So you have to learn how to focus your mind, how to get focused, and keep yourself from creating those kinds of thoughts that are always impinging on your consciousness. Miracles are available there. You talk about surrendering. I meditated for a long time. It's like there would be a light. I would have this light that I would create. And it's really interesting that you can create a light with your eyes closed in a dark room. So you don't really need your eyes to create light. You need your mind to create light. Your mind can create light. And all of us do it in our dreams. We can create a color in our dream without any light. So that our minds are capable of producing that. And our minds can create smells, and we can create sounds. We do all of that in our dream. And that's just a pure thought state. So what you want to do is get to that pure thought state.
Second verse of the Tao Te Ching. Quote, under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty, only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good, only because there is evil. Being and non-being produce each other. The difficult is born in the easy. Long is defined by short, the high by the low. Before and after go along with each other. So the sage lives openly with apparent duality and paradoxical unity. The sage can act without effort and teach without words, nurturing things without possessing them. He works, but not for rewards. He competes, but not for results. When the work is done, it is forgotten. That is why it lasts forever. Unquote. Living the paradoxical unity. Has it ever occurred to you that beauty depends on something being identified as ugly? Therefore, the idea of beauty produces the idea of ugliness, and vice versa. Just think of how many concepts in this duality belief system depend on opposites. A person isn't tall unless there's a belief system that includes short. Our idea of life couldn't exist without that of death. Day is the opposite of night. Male is the antithesis of female. What if you instead perceived all as a piece or a glimpse of the perfection of oneness? I think this is what Lao Tzu is suggesting with his description of the sage who lives openly with apparent duality and paradoxical unity. Imagine the perfect oneness coexisting in the apparent duality, where opposites are simply judgments made by human minds in the world of the 10,000 things. Surely the daffodil doesn't think that the daisy is prettier or uglier than it is, and the eagle and the mouse have no sense of the opposites we call life and death. The trees, flowers, and animals know not of ugliness or beauty. They simply are, in harmony with the eternal Tao, devoid of all judgment. As the sage lives openly with apparent duality, he synthesizes the origin with the manifestation, without forming an opinion about it. Living without judgment and in perfect oneness is what Lao Tzu invites his readers to do. He invites our wisdom to combine perceived opposites and live a unified life. The perfection of the Tao is allowing apparent duality while seeing the unity that is reality. Life and death are identical. Virtue and sin are judgments needing both to identify either. These are the paradoxes of a unified life. This is living within the eternal Tao. Once the dichotomies or pairs of opposites are transcended, or at least seen for what they are, they flow in and out of life like the tides. Practice being a living, breathing paradox every moment of your life. The body has physical boundaries. It begins and ends and has material substance. Yet it also contains something that defies boundaries, has no substance, and is infinite and formless. You are both the Tao and the 10,000 things simultaneously. Let the contrasting and opposite ideas be within you at the same time. Allow yourself to hold those opposite thoughts without them canceling each other out. Believe strongly in your free will and ability to influence your surroundings, and simultaneously surrender to the energy within you. Know that good and evil are two aspects of a union. In other words, accept the duality of the material world while still remaining in constant contact with the oneness of the eternal Tao. The debilitating necessity to be right and make others wrong will soon diminish. I believe that Lao Tzu would apply the Tao Te Ching to today's world by suggesting the following. First, live a unified life. Enter the world of oneness with an awareness of the propensity to compartmentalize everything as good or bad, right or wrong, beautiful or ugly, are standards of the physical world, not the Tao. Contemplate the insight that duality is a mind game. In other words, people look the way they look, period. Criticism is not always necessary or helpful. See the unfolding of the Tao inside everyone, including yourself, and be at peace with what you observe. Be a good animal and move freely, unencumbered with thoughts about where you should be and how you should be acting. For instance, imagine yourself as an otter, just living your otterness. You're not good or bad, beautiful or ugly, a hard worker or a slacker. You're simply an otter, moving through the water or on the land freely, peacefully, playing and without judgment. When it's time to leave your body, you do so, reclaiming your place in the pure mystery of oneness. This is what Lao Tzu means when he says, when the work is done, it is forgotten. That is why it lasts forever. In other words, you don't have to leave your body to experience forever. It's possible to know your eternal self even in the embodied condition. When duality and judgment crop up, allow them to be a part of the perfect unity. When other people create dichotomies, you can always know oneness by practicing the Tao. Also, accomplish much by trying less. Effort is one piece of the whole. Another piece is non-effort. Fuse these dichotomies, and the result is effortless action without attachment to outcome. This is precisely how you dance with someone. You make an attempt, assume a position, listen to the music, and let go all at the same time, allowing yourself to easily move with your partner. Combine the so-called opposites into the oneness of being without judgment or fear. Labeling action as a fine effort implies a belief that trying hard is better than not trying. But trying itself only exists because of beliefs about not trying. Attempting to pick up a piece of trash is really just not picking up the trash. Once you've picked it up, then trying and not trying are irrelevant. Understand that you can act without the implied judgment of words such as effort and trying. You can compete without being forced to focus on outcome. Eliminating opposites paradoxically unifies them so that it is unnecessary to identify with one position. I imagine that in today's language, Lao Tzu would sum up this second verse of the Tao Te Ching in these two simple words. Just be. Do the Tao now.